Hello students, welcome to this lesson on learned behavior. What is learned behavior? Before we are going to answer this question, we need to have a working definition of what we mean by learning. Learning means the strengthening of existing responses or the formation of new responses to existing stimuli through practice or repetition or insight. Learned behavior means any manner of conduct that organisms develop as a result of experience or insight. There are many different kinds of learned behavior that includes habituation, sensitization, insight learning, latent learning, and associative learning that include classical conditioning and operant conditioning. What are the main differences between innate and learned behavior? Innate behaviors are genetically determined or genetically hardwired and common to all members of a species. But learned behavior is not genetically determined and it can be changed by or develops through experience or insight and may vary from individual to individual within a species. Innate behavior is fully functional at the first attempt, but learned behavior cannot be fully functional at the first attempt because it develops through trial and error or by insight. Most of the time, innate behavior cannot be modified by experience or learning, but learned behavior may be modified by new experience or insight. Innate behavior is adaptive, which means it has its own survival value, but learned behavior may be or may not be adaptive. Let us see the first types of learned behavior, habituation. What is habituation? Habituation is a decreased response to a harmless stimulus after repeated exposure to that stimulus over a period of time. For example, humans' habituation to harmless odor or deodorant after repeated exposure to this odor. If someone spray deodorant in the class, we all have experienced noticing the smell on entering the room at the first entrance, but sometime later we do not noticing the presence of the smell of the deodorant in the class. This is due to habituation. That means we stopped responding to the smell even though the smell is still present. The second example to habituation is aplysia or snail's habituation to harmless touch. If you have watched snails in your community, they move by extending their tentacles forward. If you touch their tentacles by harmless material, at the first time they withdraw their tentacles, but if you touch their tentacles by the same harmless material over and over again, the snails stop withdrawal response. The third example is habituation of prairie dogs to harmless large organisms. We know that prairie dogs always give an alarm call when they see predators or large animals. This alarm call allows the group to retreat into their burrows. But if harmless humans frequently appear around their habitat or burrows, the prairie dogs stop giving an alarm call or stop responding to human, in this case, the harmless stimulus. Habituation can occur at different levels in the nervous system, at sensory level and at brain level. That means it can happen because sensory systems may stop sending signals to the brain in response to a continuously present or repeated stimulus, what we call sensory habituation. It can also happen at the brain level because the brain still perceives the stimulus but has simply decided no longer to pay attention, what we call brain habituation. The second type of learned behavior is sensitization. Sensitization means an increased response to a harmless stimulus when that stimulus occurs after a harmful stimulus. For example, if a person violently jumped when he or she sees a coiled rope after he or she escaped from a snake, in this case, the person gives an increased response to harmless stimulus, the rope. Why this happen? Because the rope or harmless stimulus occurs after the harmful stimulus, in this case, snake. Second example, if a rat violently jumped when touched by any object after it escaped from the mouth of a cat. Why the rat jumped to any touch stimulus? Because every touch stimulus by any object occurs after harmful stimulus, in this case, the cat. The strength and duration of sensitized response depends on the extent of the initial sensitization or the harmful stimulus that the organisms have faced. In higher animals, there are two types of sensitization: peripheral sensitization and central sensitization. Peripheral sensitization refers to the sensitization that results from changes in neurons of the peripheral nervous system, whereas central sensitization refers to the same process occurring in neurons of the central nervous system.